How you doing?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you also, especially this. It's been a number of years since we had opportunity to see each other. So, I mean, this is the new way of communicating and getting back together, right?
I know this is sad, but this is it.
Yeah.
This is our consolation prize. With that,
Yeah.
David, will you please introduce yourself to the Cool Careers audience?
Okay. First of all, I just want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to your audience, and sharing this great opportunity that you launched most recently. But as Shay said, my name is David Northern. I'm the CEO of the Champaign County Housing Authority. And I've been in the housing industry almost 26 plus years, which is crazy, but it probably shows with the greatest all on my face right now.
Wisdom.
The Champaign County Housing Authority is one of 39 special housing authorities in the nation, where we have a move to work status from HUD, where we have a special designation to really focus on the local needs to help clients and help the community grow. We look at what our clients need, and we can change our policies and not utilize the top-down approach that most agencies. We have close to 5,000 agencies in the nation, so this is one of 13. And so it's a very unique opportunity for any industry professional to work in, but also for any community to have, because it really meets the needs of the community. During COVID, we made some real changes that really helped, but overall, we managed close to 3,000 housing units. We're in the process of developing close to 600 units right now, with over $120 million of affordable housing development funds, utilizing low-income housing tax credits, 9%. I mean, we have like 8 developments going on right now, so it's very exciting. But we're that housing authority that really think about the people that we serve, and we understand, being a move to work agency, that it's more than bricks and mortar. We got to utilize those wraparound services that allow our people to be successful for the long term. And so I'm thankful for that. But with that being said, being the CEO, I'm also involved with the industry. So I'm currently the Senior Vice President of the Public Housing Authority Directors Association, which is a national industry group out of DC. Being Senior Vice President means that in the next year, I'll be the national president. We oversee close to 2,000 housing authorities in terms of leadership, policy, legislation, and just guidance to make and help them create opportunities for their clients that they serve. I mean, so this is great. I'm born and raised in Gary, Indiana, so I've overcame a lot of obstacles to be where I am, and that's why I appreciate even more that the Lord blessed me to have this leadership opportunity. I could have been one of those statistics that most people talk about, but I'm that statistic that's helping people that may have been that statistic to overcome some of those obstacles that they need to still overcome. And so I'm just really thankful for that. I went to Ball State for my undergrad. I won Golden Gloves in boxing, played a little football, changed my major to accounting, which was a challenge in itself. However, I graduated with it. After 5.5 years, I still made it either way, right? So, hey, that's right. So, out of college, came back, in the community, worked hard, did a lot of mentoring and coaching, and really felt that I had an opportunity to do something special with this housing career. So I stuck with it.
I feel like that is what, I really wanted. That's why I have you here, because your position right now is not only relevant, not only cool, but very relevant. And I really want us to talk a little bit more about, what that means locally, federally, on a state level, that sort of thing. So I really want you to really kind of get down to explain to everyone what that means.
I mean, even right now, oh, sorry.
Well, no, before we get started, I just want to kind of make the connection here. So you are kind of like my brother-in-law.
Kind of like.
Well, I don't want to discount your actual blood relatives and insert myself. But you and my husband grew up together. Y'all are brothers. And so therefore you're my brother. And so you guys came from the same background. You guys have made it. Really? Do you feel like that? Like you've made it?
I feel like that, I compared to if you look at the numbers of the people that I grew up around and the people that I went to high school with, I've made it. Both me and Scott's made it. We both graduated with accounting degrees too. So that's what's funny about that. So.
Yeah. So what I typically, because I know you are the master networker. You're really good. You can work a room. Tell us about how networking and relationships and connections have really enhanced your career.
Well, I'll say this, that, work hard at whatever you do. understand your skill set, your goals, and fine tune everything you need to make sure that your everyday job is great. But never discount networking. Never discount going into a room, making everybody feel special. That's one thing that I really utilized, as a pivotal point to make it where I am. I didn't grow up with the silver spoon. I didn't have a great father figure. Actually, I overcame so many obstacles. People look at it and like, man, you really did that. I was labeled as having a learning disability. I didn't have a father that was wearing suits. I didn't learn how to really wear suits until I was out of college. But I looked at mentors that I had, and I really learned from them. How do they work the room? So I went out and I imitated them, basically. They didn't know I was, but I imitated them. I shook hands like they did. Made it seem like I was special. They say you fake it till you make it. Well, I did it, and now I made it, right? So it worked out so well for me that I became the first CEO, African-American CEO of the Lake County Housing Authority at 34. And that was something that's unheard of. It was a traditionally, predominantly white community, only 2% African-American. So I came in there as the VP at 28 and worked so hard. At about 34, I was the CEO of it.
That's amazing. So you mentioned mentorship. Do you have a mentor at this time, and have you always had a mentor?
I've always had mentors, right? And sometimes they might not even know that they're my mentor. But like I said, you watch people, how to drink wine. As an African-American male, far in between, especially growing up, we didn't have a whole lot of people that we can look at as related to that. So when I had that, I really paid attention and learned how to wear a tie. I remember the first trip I went on was with my boss in East Chicago. I was probably 26 years old. He said, "You have a suit?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have a suit." Took me to DC. That's the first time I drank wine, like real wine, like Merlot and stuff like that, right? When I had a real steak, I learned how to cut a steak. And, I learned from that. So, but I've always had people I can depend on and talk to, coaches, people that look like me and people that don't look like me, that's been there, that I can ask questions of, and they give me the correct answer.
And do you mentor? Tell me about your give back.
As far as giving back from the beginning, even in college, I became a resident housing assistant. And I remember working with individuals that got in trouble, or individuals on the floor that really, caused issues, and just giving them guidance in the right way, because I had to do the same thing or learn the same thing from others. But in working in East Chicago, Indiana, it was one of the roughest streets in the state of Indiana, Guthrie Street in East Chicago. Being a football coach, I really worked with some kids, and I really found that a lot of the kids didn't have people like me at home. They didn't have young, college-educated men that they can look at. I had my own house. I was married. I had a college degree. I had a motorcycle and a car, and didn't have to worry about the police pulling me over. And so I spent a lot of time around them young men, both, African-American and Spanish or Latino, and they learned from me. And they're great, successful young people today. But still today, I still mentor.
That's great. That's great. Now, you mentioned you were the resident of your housing resident. So this housing thing has been going on for a while.
Yeah. I've been like, and you know what? I use that, you talk about careers. I use that on my resume right now, right? So I have over 26 years of federal assistant housing, affordable housing. If I count my 3 years of student housing, I'm close to 30, right?
Yeah.
But, young people, I would tell you right now, if you're going to college and you're looking for a career, you're looking for an opportunity to have a job while you're in college and help pay for your way, and you're going to gain valuable skill sets, resident assistance is there.
Okay. All right. And that's like do you apply that separately from work study? Is that a separate from work study?
Well, what happens with that, it's not like it's kind of similar to a work study. You apply for the role. In most cases, you get free room and board. You have to work, so you get so many hours a week as far as working, whether you on call or you work in the front desk. And it's just a way to help pay. When I decided to stop playing sports, I couldn't depend on scholarships. So when I sat with the council, they told me a few ways that I can stay in college and not have a humongous amount of debt. And that was what I utilized. But that brought me more.
That was really smart. So how did you know you wanted to do housing? So you leave college. How did the whole housing thing start?
It goes back to the networks. While in college, I dated a young lady I ended up marrying. That's the mother of both of my kids. And, it's funny, but she was a beautician, and she did hair. she did the hair of the local housing authority's director's sister. And so I was real kind to her. They liked me. You know, her daughter went to school with me, and I come home and visit my girlfriend, and she'll say, hey, could you drop this back off to her? I'm like, cool, no problem. And so when she found out I applied for a job in accounting at that housing authority in East Chicago, she said, oh, don't even worry about it. It's over with. You got this job. I got the job. So that's that network.
Wow. Yes, that is.
But remember, if I would have been, you know, not a good person, if I'd have came down to the beauty shop or whatever and acted out, if when she asked me to drop stuff off to her daughter, I would have said no or play like, you know, I didn't want to do that. She wouldn't have known I was a good person. She wouldn't have been able to give me that reference that needed to open that door for me to help me be here today.
Everything matters, right?
Everything matters.
So why don't you school us a bit about how housing works? I think there's a lot of misconceptions, right? Can you tell us, you know, how that works on a local, state, federal level in, you know, the most briefest way possible?
Basically, you
complicated.
Know,
it can be complicated, right?
Yeah, it is complicated, right? So, so we're funded by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. They fund a lot of housing, veteran housing, you know, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, a lot of mortgages also. But I work in the affordable housing side, primarily public housing. And so each state had to enact laws to receive money from the federal government to have jurisdictions in different areas of the state. Like I mentioned earlier, it's close to 5,000 housing authorities throughout this nation. So all that money come straight from the federal government to the housing authorities. Now, well, the housing authority, we have a board locally. So we're not a government agency. We kind of, they call quasi-governmental. Most housing authorities have not-for-profits now so that we can do things that quasi-governmental organizations can't do. But, you know, we're that bricks and mortar piece for the community. Those that need help and assistance, people with disabilities, our seniors, you know, our lower income individuals, you know, our service providers, some of our teachers and firemen and you know, police officers, they need affordable housing, especially in some of these communities that's higher cost. You know, you want individuals to be able to live in your community, work in your community, play in your community, and appreciate your community. But some of them can't even afford to live there. So the housing authorities make that possible. And we make that possible in a couple of ways. We have units that we own, which is usually public housing. Nowadays, there's some changes to that, but that'll go into a lot more complicated. But at the end of the day, units that we own and operate with the federal funding. And then when we have a housing choice voucher, most people know that's Section 8, but it's called a housing choice voucher that gives a person the opportunity to rent from any landlord anywhere where a housing authority has jurisdiction. So we just assist that person based on their income to have, you know, that roof over their head.
And so there's, I know a lot of people feel like, what is the demo? I mean, who typically, what's a typical situation or a person who would be a recipient of a housing? Would a single mom with 3 kids or a single dad that's a police officer? Like, how does this really work?
It's based on need and opportunity, right? I know, like, a lot of times people get help in some ways and they lean on that help for years. But if you look at our typical client, for example, Champaign County, our typical household average close to $17,500 of income on average a year. The national average is $12,000. So our programs are working. When I mentioned earlier those wraparound services to make people successful, they're working. But typically the income is $12,000. So we're looking at individuals as lower income, seniors, people with disabilities, or may not have the education or the guidance to move to that next level. And also they look at, when they look at affordable housing or public housing, they look at it as, you know, minorities. That's not the case. You know, overall, it's a large population centers like Houston, Philly, Chicago, that has a lot of affordable housing, and a lot of times it's minority because those are, in most cases, urban cores. But if we're talking about 50 major urban cores with 5,000 housing authorities, most of it is urban. You know, most of the big places are urban. Most of the housing is in rural areas where you may have, yeah, so it's a more Caucasian individuals. So the statistics overall is a lot more Caucasians on housing, even if you look at pure numbers of population throughout this country.
Is that the case in your county?
Well, in Lake County, it was like almost half and half.
Okay.
And here, it's a few more, African Americans own housing, and that's because we're really close to Chicago, and we have a university here. And so a lot of times people escape from the urban core to get to more calmer environments that's still urban, but not mass urban, right? And so people come down here when we have housing, in Champaign. It's more south, close to the Indiana border. We're located perfectly. We're 2 hours from Indianapolis, 2 hours from Chicago, and 2 hours from St. Louis, which all are pretty much larger urban cores.
I see. So the demographic you spoke of before with Caucasians being higher, you mean in a whole?
Yeah, as a whole, yes.
In general, yeah. I
see.
Even
in terms of staff, right? Like I said before, in 2008, I became the first African American Housing Authority Director, CEO of Lake County. But the population of Lake County was, in my jurisdiction, was only 2% African American. So in Lake County, we had 3 housing authorities: Waukegan, Lake County, and North Chicago. So even if it's one county, you can have a number of housing authorities. In Champaign County, we only have 1 housing authority.
I see. Now tell me a little bit about, the working class or the working poor and the people of color, and how this affects, housing affects education and so much. So are some of these people near homeless, and they've moved up in this section, or they've been displaced in some type of way? I'm trying to figure out how one would know that this was available for them.
Well, we partner with a lot of community partners, domestic violence, homeless shelters, even schools. Right now, we're proposing we're proposing a student voucher. We're next to the University of Illinois. They have an amazing program where if you make under a certain amount a year and you get accepted to the university, you get free tuition. Well, think about our program participants that also get housing. They can live on campus where they have the availability to meet, grow, and build as young people with diverse populations without having to go home and deal with the forces that may be at home that may make education, overcoming those obstacles, challenging. And so those are the type of flexibilities that we have. So when we talk about individuals on housing, today we're talking about individuals, in most cases, they want to move along that spectrum. And I'll take you back to Champaign. I mentioned we was a move to work agency. So we have certain requirements that individuals got to adhere to. If you're 18 to 64, you have to work or be in school, or you can't be on our program. And you only have 8 years on our program, right? If you're head of household, unless you're disabled or you turn 55.
So is that normal? So this is a temporary solution for them to really have the American dream? Are you helping them transfer to ownership? What's the next course of action for them?
Well, the whole goal is self-sufficiency. Everybody shouldn't be a homeowner. And that's just, I've been a homeowner and I've been a renter, and I realized that, and especially with my experience in housing, everybody shouldn't be a homeowner. Some people need to rent. And so our goal is to move them along that spectrum to self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency means you're able to live efficiently without utilizing the resources that the housing authority may provide. And we give them 8 years for that. So we provide the wraparound services, not ourselves, but we partner with other organizations. For example, the university. If an individual live in our program now, get accepted, they can get free tuition. University of Illinois, Big Ten university, top research university. They graduate without debt. They don't need to come back in housing. They can start a career. So that's our goal. Help people. We want to be that engine to help people move along that spectrum to self-sufficiency.
I see. Now, that's really great. Actually, I have so many more questions, but we're going to stay focused.
Okay, no problem.
How has COVID affected housing? And I hear on the news a lot about dense housing communities, that sort of thing. Tell us a bit how this works, and maybe even let us know what the news isn't telling us about dense housing.
Well, I'm gonna tell you one thing. Being a leader, like I said, not only locally but throughout this housing nation, I'm never afraid to tell my story. So I've been affected by COVID personally. I'm on my second 14-day confinement right now as a result of being exposed. Been blessed not to test positive, but both my kids, their mom, their stepdad, and my nephew tested positive. And I lost a cousin last Thursday with COVID, and other family members passed away as a result of it. And so, dealing with all that during this pandemic and being a leader that's responsible for over 3,000 citizens and their housing needs, it's been challenging. So, you have to work extra hard. I'm dealing with staff members that's mentally affected, maybe like me, that don't really want to work no more right now, that has kids that should be in school, that whether they have special needs or not, they need to be at home with their family, or husbands or wives that no longer have a job as a result of what's going on. So it's been challenging to keep things going. We've been able to make some changes with policy in order to help our staff along with our clients. I believe staff is our most valuable resources. I can build a $30 million building, but if I don't have the right people to maintain it or bring people in housing, it means nothing. And so we have to take care of the people that's working for us, because they're our best and most valued assets. But then we also got to think about the clients that we serve, because the clients we serve is the reason we're doing this. And so trying to balance all that, keep a balanced budget, and be mentally strong, it's been challenging overall.
Yeah.
And you won't hear that. What you will hear is the House Authority made this special allotment for individuals in shelters for COVID, that we're cleaning 3 or 4 times a day, or we hire minority contractors to help with the COVID cleanups and things like that, or we're providing food or handing out masks. But you don't hear about that we're suffering as individuals, and that, a lot of times they don't think that we're essential workers, but now they see that we are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So why is it that in dense communities, they feel like it's more prevalent, that COVID is more affected in these particular areas?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. It is more. It ain't that they feel like it. It is. First of all, we have large population centers. Most public housing or affordable housing is developed on the worst land, Superfund sites, close to Superfund sites, where it was undesirable. So they gave it away to the feds in order to build it. Take Chicago, for example. Most of the affordable housing was built on a lake shore. You know how the lakes was created? The Lake Michigan, how it grew, and how they have Navy Pier stuff down there now. They use the garbage. They dump garbage there to build on top of it. And so most of the housing was along that lake shore. So the lands really wasn't that good. The factories, the mills, that's where they at. And so now they cleaned some of that stuff up, tore down, and now they see that beautiful lake and things different. Now all of us, I want to say the white flight, the suburban, the urban sprawl where people left, which is perfect. Now they want to come back because they know now it's valuable assets. In East Chicago, Indiana, my first job out of college, I worked there for 5 years. Right now, my office, the maintenance building I developed, the streets I redid, the housing I spent millions and millions of dollars on, the school that we built, all tore down. We found out now it was built on a Superfund site. So when you talk about the health effects of individuals in housing, and it was arsenic, lead, and things like that in the land that they living on every day, why the cancer rates high? Why is there so many kids with special needs? Why everybody has asthma? And so COVID-19 hits those type of individuals even worse. And then you're in close corners. You don't have you're catching a bus to work, right? You don't have the money to buy cars a lot of times. You have a food desert. So you're shopping at the gas station or the corner store. So it's just so much. And people don't understand. If people don't understand why housing is so important, if people didn't understand why it's so important before, they should understand it now.
Wow, you just, that's really deep. So a lot of these things that you've explained looks like bad parenting, bad eating, and bad choices, when really it's the environment that they live in.
Yeah. I mean, if all your food choices is junk food or foods that's not healthy for you, what you gonna do? If you can't afford to drive, 20 minutes or 30 minutes away to a decent grocery store, what are you gonna do? When we grew up in Gary, you talked about Gary. When we grew up in Gary, I grew up around 5 Superfund sites. Now, Superfund sites are sites that the EPA determined that was so environmentally effective to the community that they shut them down and they had to do remediation on them. I grew up by 5 of them. There's nowhere in the world we wasn't affected by that.
Okay. Wow. And those places are still there.
They still there. I mean, they still right there. And we played in the areas. We didn't know. We saw signs. We didn't know what they were. Don't play here. don't dump here, don't do this. We still was there. I mean, we were kids. We didn't know. Nobody told us. Our parents didn't know about Superfund sites. I didn't know about them really until I was working on my master's. I have a master's in public administration, and I did some real tough work on environmental because I'm dealing with housing, and I want to understand the environmental effects on individuals that live in housing with lead-based paint, right? I mean, most housing authorities was using lead-based paint for years. So now we're still trying to get lead-based paint out of housing authorities in this nation. So lead-based paint, little kids, lead in paint tastes like sugar. It tastes like candy. So little kids eat it. It get in their blood, and like it stops their growth and stunts their growth and bring all kind of hazards. And then just being around it cause issues. Look at Flint, Michigan. That's lead. So you got a whole city think about it. We're going through a pandemic, and you got a city that can't even drink their water.
Right.
Still to this day.
And there's so many Flints.
That's just one thing.
I work for a consulting firm, an environmental consulting firm.
Okay.
I have to speak with scientists. I recruit scientists at all levels, and there's a lot of conversation about water and land, testing, permitting. So I'm learning a lot. This is a new space for me. So when you're speaking, I can relate to those sort of things. Those people with those type of experience are the people we're hiring.
But one thing resonated when you said that was that in 5 years in East Chicago, I probably spent close to $60 million. Most cases, every time I had to do a major project, I built a $1 million maintenance facility. We had to do environmental reviews because it had gas pipelines going through there to get the gas and different stuff to the mills and stuff that's out there. Nobody ever said we had lead or arsenic and stuff in the ground. But if we had environmental reviews, why didn't somebody say something? We found old legislation and old minutes from years ago where they said only black and brown gonna live there, so it don't matter.
Wow.
So that's when we talk about systemic racism. That's when we talk about, the property values. We talk about income. I mean, it's real. I was an elected school board member. I was a homeowner. I paid taxes. I was on the PTO. I coached football. So I know the difference between systemic racism when we talk about basing the funding of school based on the property taxes. In the rich neighborhoods, the property taxes out the roof. Yeah. In our areas, in our neighborhoods, most of it's affordable, so there's no property taxes. We pay payment in lieu of taxes as agencies. But we don't pay full property taxes. So the schools don't have the money to compete. So if you want to make it fair, you want to end systemic racism, which was really started with redlining or legal discrimination and segregation years ago. Think about it. Martin Luther King was assassinated in '68. The Fair Housing Act was created in '68. Just after he was assassinated, it was pushed through. Before then, you can legally segregate. You can legally discriminate against people that wanted loans. Redlining. They passed a law for it, but that don't mean it didn't stop. And so I don't want to get in a tangent because we're going through civil unrest right now, but I'm passionate about this and educating myself and being a part of, things that's changing, the rhetoric around it, being honest about it, dealing with it differently. It's just coming to light, and we see it's coming to light in our streets.
And when you talk about redlining, and we'll go back to our other conversation, we speak about redlining. This is why, local government is really important. This is why we should stay close to our state government to really stay in tune, because all of these things are happening kind of behind the scenes or right in front of us, because we're only paying attention to, the major elections and the presidential elections. Some of the other things kind of get through and get past, and then we're in this type of situation. So, wow, we are unpacking so much here. So,
all politics local. Like I said, I was on the school board, and then in 2015, I was the first African American elected school board to that district. We didn't even have a diversity policy. I did research, and it was like it's only 2 school districts in the county that has a diversity policy. Yeah, because they were sued and somebody made them do it. So my policy that I created for that district was a diversity policy.
What does a diversity policy do for a school district?
Well, it has a policy to say we're going to align ourselves to being diverse in our hiring and buying books for our library. And what started me to think that way was that I said my kids was the only person that looked like them in the school. My daughter came home and told me, Dad, we read Cinderella, Asian Cinderella, Mexican Cinderella, white Cinderella, no African American Cinderella. So how that makes her feel? There's nobody in none of the books that represent her, other than the old segregation type books or the old slavery books. So I said, somebody got to do something. And I don't want to do it all, and I can't do it all, but I do know the Lord gave me a certain skill set. I'm not perfect, but I am a leader. And so I stepped up and ran to the table and found that I was the first ever elected. Since me, it's been others now.
So you are a father, and you're a father of African-American son. Not saying that African-American daughter doesn't matter, but I know that conversations with your kids, are really important. Can you talk to the audience a bit about, the talk and the continuous talk, as a Black man and a Black executive at work, in the workplace, and what that conversation is like?
It's challenging. Again, I said, I became the first African-American elected school board member. My kids was wondering, how much you get paid for that? I said, I don't. I basically pay to do it. In a sense, I'm paying taxes for it. And it's free labor, in a sense, for them, for me, utilizing my skill sets, but I care. And so I did it for you. I did it for the Caucasian kids. I did it for the Caucasian moms and dads that never really see individuals like me doing it. That's why I coached on the football team there. That's why, my wife was on a cheerleading team there, on a squad, so that we can show that we care also and represent you guys, and then now they're at that driving age. Now, one's 16, one's 17. My son is 16, just turned 16. We both of them have their cars. We blessed and fortunate to have income. They have cars. And so with all this civil unrest going on right now, I had to have a number of talks with them, even with dating individuals outside his race, right? Dating young ladies. We had to talk with all the riots and protesting going on. They said, why aren't you riding, Dad? I said, well, everybody got to utilize their platform. When you have a war, and I use the analogy of a war, you have infantry, and those are people on the front lines fighting, shooting, doing whatever it takes. You lose a lot of them, right? Then you have the medics that's coming to help them. You had the generals and the strategists that's sitting down at the table changing policy and saying, okay, let's hit this building over here. Let's hit them from this side. That's who I am. There's not a lot of me, but that's who I am. So I chose not to allow them to go out there. And that conversation, I had tears, because I pray to God nothing ever happened like that. I pray to God that they don't have to deal with the racism that I still deal with every day, and I'm very successful.
And do you feel like you encounter racism in the workplace, even though you're the executive director?
Yes. It's systemic, and there's a lot of very warming people out there of all different races. Sometimes it's, I catch a lot of heat from older African Americans. Who is this young guy think he is? He think this, he think that, right? Caucasians, I catch it from everybody. Recently, our local newspaper, News Gazette, asked me to do a story about being Black in America, and I talk about some of my experiences, and I did. And it took me a while to say yes. It took me a couple of days. Then I had to really think about it. And in writing it, I utilized the assistance of one of my interns. He's a white guy, white kid. And so, I wrote up what I wanted to say. Then I had him interview me so it could come out more. We was on Zoom. I'm crying like a baby.
Really?
That's how touching it was, the amount of racism and prejudice that I had to deal with, the disrespect. In that article, I talked about one case, but that was just one of many cases that I had to deal with. And they still look at you funny now to this day sometimes. I still get emails and texts from people to say, I'm listening, I'm hearing you. And I'm like, it's 2020, about time. But I appreciate that though, right? But we got to really make some changes. And so I'm gonna always utilize my platform to make a change and make sure individuals that look like me, but also ones that don't look like me, get opportunities. And that's why I'm blessed to have a position that I have, that I can create policy, I can create housing, I can give jobs, and not give them away, but give it to qualified individuals regardless of their race.
That's right. And that's what equality is all about.
Exactly.
And equal employment is all about. Now, can we talk a little bit about the article? I
Yeah.
want to share just not necessarily the entire story, but just kind of the ending. You basically had to pull yourself out of the, kind of being a spokesperson for a big project because you are African American.
Yeah.
Is the gist of the conversation that you were having with the newspaper?
Yeah, well, yeah, I kind of expressed the situation. And what's so funny is that, that's where I was a school board member at. That's where the community I lived in. But me going to the meeting with call, it was already hard enough that it was affordable housing because the first thing they thought about is African Americans. When more individuals is Caucasian, it was a senior property also. So more seniors need affordable housing that's Caucasian than African Americans because by sheer numbers, there's more of them. And so, I couldn't go to the meetings. It was such an uproar in meetings, even though I wasn't there. If I would have walked in there, being a spokesperson, leading that meeting, it would have never happened. And so in the article I mentioned, imagine a scar. Sometimes I think about, I should have said, forget that. I'm going anyway. But that building may not be here. So I had to look at, do I want to make a statement or do I want to develop affordable housing? Because my job is to develop affordable housing. So I did that, but I don't think I ever do that again.
Congratulations, Dave. That's a great story. And kudos for you for being the bigger person. Why don't you guide someone who's interested in housing, who's interested in your career choice, who wants to start a career, even post, graduate, how to get started and what they should, be doing to get started in this kind of industry.
Well, as I mentioned before, it's a number of housing authorities throughout this nation. So in best guess scenario, if you want to be in affordable housing, especially public housing, you can find one in some close to your jurisdiction. Start going to their board meetings and learn about them, figuring out what they do, figuring out what wraparound services that they connect with in terms of other not-for-profits in the community. You talked about mentorship. It's it's a few major housing organizations we have. One is called NARO, the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials. When I was pretty young in the housing industry, I still was doing pretty good in terms of being on boards and helping out with policy that not just affected my local jurisdiction, but national jurisdictions. So the current president, who was a Caucasian lady, Renee Rucker, I never forget her name, of that organization, she asked me to chair an ad hoc committee on young professionals. So as an end result of that, me chairing that meeting, our report came out and we talked about the need for internships. We talked about the need for mentors, and we talk about the need to deal with not just young professionals in housing, but individuals transitioning from other careers. And I'm happy to say it was a success. So we've been able to get a number of housing professionals in it. And so just get involved and understand what's going on. You don't have to, I always tell people this. If you're a good person and you care about the issues, if you have good values, I'll teach you what I need you to know. It's not rocket science, but it's that heart that you have, the willingness to work hard. Sometimes being a self-starter. You can go to a grocery store and they'll have a step-by-step manual on how to scan stuff. If the scanner's not working, type this in and do that. We don't have that in some positions, especially as you get higher in housing authorities. It's about making it work, making it happen. And so if you're one of those individuals and you really care, go for it. Start looking at the industry groups, publications. Start understanding what's happening locally related to housing. Go to some of the city council meetings and figure out your zoning ordinance. Start speaking up about things, and you may get noticed and may get the opportunity.
This has been truly amazing. I learned so much today, and honestly, I'm kind of without words. I could barely ask my questions from feeling a lot of emotion with a lot of things that you were saying. So I know that you're very busy. I know you got your own thing, and you have so many groups and committees and a business, and you're an executive director and a father. So thank you so much for your time. And you're a great brother. And I hope that you think I'm a great sister, and I appreciate your time. And I love you so much. And you're going to really teach a lot of people a lot of things just from everything that you said today. I'll make sure everyone has all your information, your contact information, your website address, they can contact you moving forward. I appreciate your time, Dave.
Well, thank you also. You are a great sister. I appreciate, our talks. We've had long talks about, career, about decisions, other type of decisions in life. And, when you call on this opportunity, I was happy to be a part of it. What you're doing is great. I wish you all the success in everything that you're doing. And, our paths are going to continually, cross, not just in a family atmosphere, but in a work environment. So you continually do great work, continue to be a great mom, and you are a great sister.
Thank you, Dave. I'll see you soon, hopefully in person.
That's right. I know, right? Hopefully with all this stuff in.
Hugs to the kids, okay?
All right. Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.